Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be discussing Aporia by Seontae. Now, before we get started, there will be spoilers, so if you don't want me spoiling some Manhwa, go ahead and click off now. No worries, I'll catch you next time. For those of you left behind, let's go over some content warnings. And buckle in because there are a lot for this one. There may be references to BDSM, safe and unsafe practices depicted, forced and consensual, self-immolation, self-harm, mentions of suicide, stalking, violence, blood, PTSD, assault, gossiping, manipulation, homomesia, mentions of arranged marriage, obsession, social gaps, toxic family dynamics, excessive drinking, child labor in the form of child acting, self-hatred, overwork, possibly disordered eating, mental illness, privacy invasion, improper use of medication, sextortion and/or blackmail, child neglect, harassment, and body shaming, which includes frequent comments on being too skinny, as these things do appear in the manhwa. Now, if that's okay with you, let's go and get started. As always, let's start with synopsis. Ju Jawook is hopelessly in love with the infamous Yoon Jaeum. Their relationship began by pure chance. Jawook just happened to be scoping out the exclusive club for BDSM enthusiasts, not because he was interested in BDSM, but because his company was being hired to design the space for an upcoming renovation and subsequent event. Jawook innocently took a seat at the bar to take down notes and sketch up plans when he was approached by none other than Jaeum. Jaeum was immediately smitten with Jawook, assuming he was a club patron as well, and, intent on finding out how compatible they are in the bedroom, invited Jawook up to his room. Far too enraptured by Jaeum to realize what he's walking into, Jawook happily agrees. After a very steamy night, Jawook wants nothing more than to be with Jaeum. But rather than being asked out officially, Jaeum has a different arrangement in mind. Jaeum intends to form a dom-sub relationship with Jawook. The main stipulation: they never pry into the other's personal lives. What Jaeum doesn't realize is that Jawook has no interest in being a sub, much less a masochist, but he does have a vested interest in Jaeum. Jawook agrees for no other reason than that he wants to be with Jaeum in any way he can, even at the risk of his pride and health. So begins Jawook's nosedive into the world of BDSM. To start out with, the art in this is very distinct. It's very sketchy and inconsistent. The body proportions are all over the place, with hands being far too big at times. Can we say yaoi hands? Fingers reminiscent of ET, limbs being far too long, and the facial features vary from panel to panel. In any other story, I would probably very much dislike this art style, but with the darker, colder, more painful storyline, I think it really works. This less than pristine style also lends itself well to the more romantic and fluffy moments with shockingly stunning panels that just come out of nowhere. It's really entrancing watching a sketchy and inconsistent style develop into something beautiful. The growth in the art is a narrative all in itself. Something that really makes this series so great though is the BDSM. If you liked Alien in My Wardrobe, turn that up by 1,000 when it comes to the sexy consensual BDSM. We have safe words, safety signals, contracts, education, constant checking in, and training. This has everything. What's even better though is how the unsafe and non-consensual, not non-con play, but true non-con, BDSM is depicted. It isn't romanticized at all, and it is routinely put down as being a negative thing, as it is. Just to be transparent, I'm someone who typically likes dubcon and non-con. However, even with my own preferences in mind, seeing how heavily consent is emphasized and how much the opposite is criticized is so sexy. It's refreshing, as there's far more unsafe and non-consenting BDSM content out there than the opposite. Jaeum is a doting, safe, consent king, and we love him for that. And there are so many different forms of play in this, like using sleeping pills to give yourself over entirely, neglect play, breath play, and all manner of bondage. This series is a BDSM paradise, and it's worth seeing for that alone. On that same token, it's very interesting to see manipulation happening from the sub and bottom side of the relationship. Regarding Manhwa specifically, it's common for the top or dom to be manipulative and more of a red flag. In this case, Jawook is actually the manipulator, and he does so by pretending to be a masochist. This isn't as forward or forthright of betrayal, but it is still a betrayal, especially for Jaeum, who emphasizes honesty and consent in his relationships. By lying about his preferences, Jawook sets up Jaeum to be a torturer without his consent or knowledge. It's interesting to see this form of lying, as most people probably wouldn't see it as such. Of course it would hurt Jaeum, especially when taking into consideration the traumatic past he has with partners manipulating him. By hiding his preferences, Jawook took away Jaehyun's ability to create an equal and satisfying partnership with him. It's just a refreshing method of creating conflict and strain in the relationship, and I really enjoyed the angle of it and how it helps Jawook grow into someone who's willing to be honest and open, even at the risk of being rejected. As much as I loved pretty much everything about this, I have to say that I hate the side couple. They just don't feel like they have any chemistry or that they even like each other. Yuta is just so cagey and flippant about things. Then pair that with Suyeon, who is cold and distant, and these two just come off as a frigid couple in general. I know part of it is because Yuta's trying to separate his feelings for Suyeon from his want for BDSM. Similarly, Suyeon's trying to prove that Yuta likes him and not just being dominated by anyone. But it just doesn't feel believable due to their lack of chemistry. It was a slog rereading their portions of the story, but that made Jawook's and Jaehyun's sections so warm and a breath of fresh air. Seeing how bad the side couple is, it ended up really bolstering the strength and chemistry in our main couple, which is a good thing in the end, I suppose. I would have rather just not have a side couple, but here we are. I will say the side story with Yuta and Suyeon was fun. That was probably the most chemistry they have throughout the entire series, but they have developed into very different people by then too, which is probably why. I wish we had seen this side of them earlier on, but it's nice to see the development later rather than never. With all that being said, I love this. I'm a sucker for BDSM, and this has such a refreshing take on the world of BDSM and its practices, particularly with our King Jaehyun, that it's impossible not to love. I love writing BDSM myself, and I long to one day write a dom as sensual and attractive as Jaehyun. I can dream. It's not perfect by any means, but it's almost better because of those imperfections. If you want some really good BDSM smut, it doesn't get much better than this. This is an instant favorite for me. So, have you read Aporia? If so, what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? Do you not? Let me know and comment below. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Bye!